ago to waive taxes when it's the very taxes we need to be able to assist those who are now going on the dole, those who are now becoming unemployed, when we need those taxes to buy the personal protective equipment for the frontline workers. So that is a reality facing most countries. But yes, we have managed well over the last 5 years. We have had positive growth over the last 5 years. Unlike the period immediately before our time, 2010 to 2015. We have not resorted over the last 5 years to any increases in taxes. But between 2010 and 2015, electricity went up 85%, water bills went up 600%, increment was stopped, non-establishment bonus honorarium paid in the end of the year amounting to about 2.5% of wages, all those were stopped. And it was not in the case of a pandemic. So Claudius Gums, you are so very right and perfectly right to say thank God for team unity. Because here it is. Before 2015, we were not having conversations about surpluses and reserve. The conversation were about the fact that we chalk up the most disgraceful debt ratio in the world. That equivalent to a failed state. 199%. It was that for the first time in the history of a government, we had to go to the IMF and we borrowed $225 million to be able to buy toilet paper for JNF Hospital, to be able to pay the salaries. That was how bad things were. So I'm happy that in the short period of 5 years, we are having a conversation about surpluses. The good thing about surpluses, they have to be preserved for the rainy day. And we all never know the intensity of the rains. And that is one of the things why we have to manage what appear to be surpluses. Look at it. In the context of the pandemic, we have had to come with over $120 million and counting to respond to it. And not 1 cent of that has come from the bank. But I would say, I don't walk with the figures at me, but that information certainly is in the public accounts that are laid before the Parliament. So that information is there. And the extending, we dealt with the issue of the impact. But I want to go to a greater picture. Because you see, I keep saying, and the point may have missed some people in the context, and it was a learning I've got from West Nettleford, Professor. All we have is us. Our first response must be us. Right now, the most powerful country in the world, the United States of America, cannot help us with 1 ventilator. All we have is us. That most powerful country had conversation with me at Prime Minister, with the Situation Room in the White House. And it was a conversation of how our government could facilitate Harris Over Limited to be able to go out to work and to produce parts that are critical for them to get ventilators going in the USA and in the rest of the world. That is a significant development. They are looking to us to supply input for them to get ventilators. Not to offer us what? The geopolitics of that has changed in a very significant way. St. Kitts and Nevis now takes on international importance in the context of that. And so, part of the negotiation we will have, well, what does that mean for Harris-Over that a couple weeks before this thing had struck, we were told that half of the plant may have to close. And they have said to us, well, that of course is going to be reconsidered positively for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. You understand what is happening? Our response then has to be in proper management. And thank God we have the results to show. Moving forward, that is why I'm not as pessimistic as others. One, when we put forward the 2020 budget, I put in that $191 million for capital expenditure. to complete the Island Main Road, to complete the project, road to prevent the shut-off should we have another, God forbid, hurricane of any magnitude, to develop the fisheries project in Old Road to assist the fisher folks earn a living, to be able to do many other things across the country. And we see how we are doing with the Island Main Road project, putting jobs, putting people there. Our housing project, we announced 30 million for mortgage financing. As we get into the period of easement with good results week by week, we now are easing up for construction. It means that those kind of activities are going to spur demand for hardware services, so those are now going to be opened. By and large, that is what they are depending upon. And we have a plan to work it. Will it be perfect? No, it will not be. Well, what about the tourism? A major plank. Will you tell me what you think will happen in tourism? For a while, nobody will travel. So what is the anxiety in terms of saying that a curfew will prevent that, even if there was no curfew? Until there is assurance across country that COVID-19 is under control, island by island, country by country, we might as well forget travel for a while. That is just a lived reality now. And whether or not we were in an emergency, that ain't going to change that. We all know that this period is the weakest period in terms of stayover arrival in St. Kitts and Nevis anyway. We have to first see American Airlines back in the air again, and BA from those critical countries which provides the bulk of our tourist arrivals, for us to really begin, as it were, to say that there are going to be substantial activity. My own understanding, and that is why all we have really is time to plan and to prepare for certain eventualities. And the CMO keeps saying, we just really don't know, but we need time. And what we have to do is to use the time wisely. So while we have this setback in tourism, which is not unique to us, nobody now going to go on any cruise anywhere. Nobody. That's just a health reality, because people have come to see and realize of all the modes of travel, perhaps the cruise have come into sharper focus for the extreme vulnerability of it. And so that is a matter that we will have to deal with. We are looking to manufacture it. We have seen now the potential for Harrissover to at least maintain for a couple more months its workers. And that is happening, notwithstanding an emergency in place. In fact, it was the existence of the emergency in large measure that led to them to call to say, what can you do? How can you help? We have seen a new line of product at Sun Island. Take hope in this. We are seeing the potential for online movement of goods and services to take place. And all these are going to generate new spheres of activity in the economy that will help us deal with this testing time and this time of challenge. The last point I want to make, we must not come always to look to government for every answer in the puzzle. That is not a lesson of development. The lesson of development must be that every citizen and resident must be creative, must look for niche, must look for opportunity, because sometimes you will find them before the government. That is why they have said that private sector and entrepreneurial activity must guide development, because people left with all their creative endeavor could come up with all these things. We had a presentation at the NEOC, NEAC, in relation to online movement, where people have developed instruments which now are going to be in greater demand, will require support services, so we can take heart with respect to that particular matter. So those are the comments I would want to make. I think we just have to be practical. not get unduly fearful, but we must be careful and not harbor anxieties. Again, with every challenge, my way of thinking is that there is an opportunity. The challenge and the prospect about the interruption of supply chain have led us to invest 10 million more for food security. The challenge, the problem, what is the opportunity and the solution? And if each of us begin to think about that, we are going to be at a better place. The challenge to the taxi men, for example, you are accustomed of charging a certain fee to move principally tourists. Are you going to be creative enough at a time when the buses can take fewer people to begin a special targeting at moving local people from point to point, even within the Basti area? There's a challenge, but there's an opportunity. Will our people seize this particular opportunity? Certainly in the context of the restriction, there's an opportunity for people to get into the delivery of good service business. Somebody with a good reputation, with reliability factor on their side, can now carve out a new opportunity for engagement. We have seen how, for example, through partnership with our ICT operators, that people are now going to be forced out of necessity to do more education online. But isn't that also an opportunity for the future? Because it shows going forward, ICT in the end is critical to the viability of nation states. What are all our people out there going to do about this new reality and how we are going to adapt that? What does it say about private people getting involved into tutoring and providing services online, since this pandemic had made it clear that we don't always need a physical space? So some people before, well, I don't have no place to teach. Certainly this is saying you really don't need that physical space.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. We're going to begin our wrap-up in just a minute. Let's see if we can get in one or two calls before we call it a day. Call you, okay, sorry caller, probably waited a bit too long. But Mr. Prime Minister, I think you answered quite a few of the questions. Let's go back to the phone lines. Call you on the air. Good afternoon. All right, well, that's it. That's it for our calls for today. So just before we go, Prime Minister, could you perhaps recap? I think you answered some of these questions already, but if you could just recap briefly for us the arrangements for instance, the ferries between Nevis and St. Kitts. I don't know if you mentioned that in terms of what the arrangement is for that. And of course, you mentioned the relaxation of the curfew. Mm-hmm. And the minute I started to talk to you and people think you're leaving, the phone started to ring. So let's go back to the phone line. Call you on the air. Good afternoon. Oh boy, I think we may be having a problem with this line because the caller is trying to get through and the line is acting up a bit. Let's try one more time. Call you on the air. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Doctor.
Ah, good. Yes, Gregory, good afternoon.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Dr. Lance, and to all the listeners. Well, I'd like to say a few things very quickly since time is short. First of all, I would like to correct again. We use the Bible, but we must use the Bible correctly. Romans chapter 13 does not give the government, any government, unlimited, unquestioning authority. It is very limited. And that is seen by the fact of verses 3, 4, and 6. Also seen by the fact that throughout the Bible, the saints, when government goes against the Bible, the saints disobey those governments and they were locked up, jailed, killed, etc. We even have civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., etc., who went against the laws of the land and got locked up and that sort of stuff. And even slave, because people had slave escape and run away and that sort of stuff, which also was against the law of the land. So saying something the law of the land does not necessarily make it biblical and does not make it necessarily legitimate either, as you have seen throughout history and throughout the Bible. Even Jesus himself disobeyed the laws of the land. So we should have a standard as to when we should know when to obey the laws of the land and when we can. And the Bible is that standard that lets us know. Also, I would like to say God let us know the limits and boundaries of government. And he wants us to solve all of our problems within our limits that he has specified upon us. be it on the government, church, family, businesses, etc. Now, where the health of the people are concerned, nowhere in the Bible do you find God giving the health of the people as part of the duty of the government. That He has given to the people themselves and to the private sector, not to the government.
Okay, caller, thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, caller. Let's go back to the phone lines. Call you live and on the air. Good afternoon. Hello.
Yeah, hello, how are you?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
I heard you saying cut him off, man.
This is a quick question for the Prime Minister. With the strain that the government is under right now with the COVID virus and with them putting out such a great stimulus, is this going to plunge the country back into debt? And second question quickly, are they looking forward past COVID virus? Like after the virus is subsided, are they looking forward ahead of that?
All right, caller, thank you very much. We'll go back to the phone lines. Call you on the air. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Very quickly. I'm pushed for time, so I'm going to be briefly. Just want to tell the Prime Minister to continue doing a good job in protecting us. And congrats on having the curfew extended for 6 months, which means that we are safer during these 6 months. Many persons want to open their business. If we do grant some of these businesses permission, I want to encourage them to tell the security force to make sure that people keeping their social distance in the 6 feet. I've been driving around as looking at the media, and I've seen, like, such as Valuemart is doing it. Rams I see doing it, but still, you need some more security forces to make sure people keep their distances. You know, I'm sorry I didn't have much time to touch on some other stuff, but in a nutshell, very quickly, for farmers, I want to thank him for allowing farmers to attend to their farms as a much more longer time, because we believe that as farmers we should be essential. You know, so there is some work to be done. I know he's listening to the people and he's seeing how best he can adjust to meet the people need. So continue doing a good job, PM, and remember, stay healthy because we need you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for calling back to the phone lines. Call you on the air. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Backers, and good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister, and to the Miss Laws. Prime Minister, good afternoon to Miss Unity, and I just calling to congratulate you. Very good job. And if you have a leader what can't change your mind, he's some serious problems. So thank you to change your mind and listen to the voices of the people and give them extra time out, and the bus drivers, them more passengers. So continue to do what you have to do. Remember in life, everything you do, you can't please everybody. Some gone sad and some gone bad. Keep on your head and be safe. See you when I see you.
All right, thank you very much. Our final call for today. Call you on the air. Hello.
Mr. Marcus, today.
Yes, sir. Mr. Montserrat.
Yes, and luckily for me, the final call. Mr. Marcus, we are down from 11 to 8 now. Me would tell you that on Vices, we got full recovery. Good afternoon to the Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris. I want to call you Pastor Harris. And good afternoon to that beautiful lady, the CMO.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Bacchus, I am not quoting. Mr. Bacchus, I want to tell the Prime Minister to tell the nation that health comes before wealth. And while you think about economy and to get the economy up and to get the economy up, nobody knows what tomorrow go hold. So the point about it, are we up here and make our farmers anyway? Are we up here and want shut down? And the people and them up to them understand. And I will shut down, I go open Monday, and then I will have that couple days, and then I will go shut down again. Mm-hmm. So secure your life first, because if you don't got no life, you don't got no economy, and you can't do nothing else. Okay, okay then, Mr. Bacchus.
All right, thank you very much. Caller, you're live and on the air. Good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bacchus. Good afternoon, Prime Minister and your team. The person who invoked the Bible, I think it is important for them to understand that Jesus only disobeyed the laws when they were in direct conflict with the laws of God. And I think that person needs to understand that. Dr. Martin Luther King also did it because there was a higher power at stake. And the public needs to understand that. Only if the laws of the country are in direct contrast and conflict with the laws of God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Call you live and on the air. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Backer.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Luckily, I got in, and Mr. Prime Minister.
Aye.
And good afternoon, and to Dr. Laws.
Good afternoon.
The question I'm asking is, are there any are you gonna give permission at some point in time for the hardware to be open? Because the hurricane season is just around the corner. We're not too sure. Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you.
We're not too sure whether we're going to rather early or late. So I was wondering that maybe you could consider that and give some sort of preference to the hardware so they can open even once, twice a week. This is just something I was asking. Thank you very much, sir. I think you all are doing a damn good job. To help with all who don't like what you're doing, but the country come first. The people come first, along with the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Calling you live and on the air. A very good afternoon to you. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, you're live. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm calling concerning the ferry from Nevis to St. Kitts.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we're listening to you.
I'm calling to find out about the ferry running from St. Kitts to Nevis.
Okay, fine. You get a response in a moment. Let's take another call. I'll call you on the air. And good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Backer. Val Thomas here. I have a
question.
Val,
good afternoon. What happened there now? Val, what sort of phone you have, man? Do call back, because I had nothing to do with that. So make sure you call me back so I can get you there before you accuse me of cutting you off. I don't want a war between Sugar City Rock and Wade of Feminine. So please give me a call, okay? I'll look out through it. But that had nothing to do with my hands are clean, okay? All right, so let's go to the Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, you have to have the last word. You can't come in now. Let me go back to the phone lines again. Caller, you're on the air. Good afternoon.
Hello?
Hello, good afternoon. You're live.
Yes. I'm trying to find out if any provision has been made for persons who have done work for various ministries in government to get their checks. Some of these works been done for months and no checks have been written, and persons cannot go out to work and cannot get any monies from the Treasury. Most of these persons are not included in the stimulus package, and they cannot get any money. They have to feed their families. So is any provision being made for persons to go and write the checks for the persons who work on contracts, for the persons who work for the ministries, including the roof project? And so these people cannot get any money, and they're not being thought of. So I'm wondering if any provisions in some of these people who write the checks are said that saying that nobody is advising them to go and prepare any checks.
All right, caller, thank you very much. We're going to take another call you on the air, and a very good afternoon to you. Go ahead, please. Hello? Hello? I think the caller is listening to something else. All right, so that's it. I was trying to get Val in, I don't know. Let me see, one more. Caller, you're on the air. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Backer.
Yes, good afternoon.
Verlin Warner here, Boys Village.
Yes, Ms. Warner.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm trying to find out, as somebody just asked, about the hardware, and I'm trying to find out if you're going to allow persons who are doing constructions on the property, if you would allow the workers to come and wrap up. As somebody rightly said, the hurricane season is just around the corner, and I would prefer that the work that has been started at the property be completed, and I can move into it. I know you have a lot on your plate, but if you can look into something like that, even if they got to be off the road by 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I would understand. But some sort of leeway, I feel, should be given to persons who are doing construction on the property so that it could be completed in time. for the hurricane season. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. Call you on the air. Good afternoon. Hello. Hello, caller.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to say congratulations to our unity government on the fabulous work that they're doing. I would like to also give a big shout out to our healthcare workers, and thanks very much to those who have come in to assist us from Cuba. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for all you do for our people, and I know in everything that you do, our people come first. This is a call from Houston, Texas. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. We go back to the phone lines. Call you on the air. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Backus.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr.
Oh, yes, sir, this comes again.
My apologies for cutting you the last time. Eh?
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Backus, I just want to say that this today, the Canadian Prime Minister, right, have ordered that the border in Canada to America be closed until the 30th of May. And the reason why I'm saying this, Mr. Backus, because there are some people and the opposition who's trying to bash the government and bash the Prime Minister for the emergency parliament yesterday and the extension of the state of emergency. We have to do it. The CMO is correct. Mr. Backus, we cannot wait until something to happen for us to do things. We have to put it in place so that when it happens, we are ahead of the game. And that's what team unity is all about. Always about the head of the game, Mr. Prime Minister, always ahead of the game. And that's what we are doing. Now, Mr. Backus, we in St. Kitts and Nevis have the best stimulus package in the region. I mean, our boss, Mr. Backus, a lot of them, they are following us. We come up with the zoning, they're talking about zoning, right? We come up with the closure and the state of emergency, and they're doing the same. Monstrat just spoke a while ago, and he said the same thing. Good day to my good friend in Monstrat. Good afternoon. Have a good day. Blessed, stay safe. They're doing the same thing, Mr. Backus. So what Team Unity is doing is the right thing. And we're calling on everybody to come on board. Stop bashing the government, because they are doing it for us. And I like the advertisement of CMO that the nurses out there, stay at home, because we are doing it for you. You stay at home. Stay at home for us while we're out there looking after you. Stay at home for us. What's so hard about that to understand? So, the Prime Minister is correct. What he's doing is correct, Mr. Backus, because at the end of the day, we'll all say it was good for Team Unity to be in power and to do the right thing to keep us safe. Take care of people. Mr. Prime Minister, let me say to you, no, don't take on about the election. When the time comes, we'll deal with that. Stay focused, stay strong, and let us deal with the situation, the pandemic. Let's deal with the virus that's affecting this country and keep our people safe. And in closing, Mr. Backus, I want to say that Team Unity is doing a very good job. I want to big up the Prime Minister and his Team Unity team.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And we want to thank you very much for calling back. And, of course, we do apologize for cutting you the first time. We're now going to invite closing comments from the Chief Medical Officer, because we want to leave the final words to the Prime Minister. So, Dr. Laws, you have the honor of wrapping up from the medical perspective. And one quick question I want to throw at you before you go is, of course, whether or not we're starting to discuss what maybe some of the new realities of life in terms of personal responsibility. You could have all the rules, all the regulations, all the enforcers, but people have to buy in to what is required of them, because you can't be watching them all the time. You can't be with them all the time. Dr. Laws.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Backus, and you are so right. We need to get buy-in from every single person here in St. Kitts and Nevis in order for us to mount a successful fight against this virus. It's the fight of our lives. I've never lived through a pandemic, and it's going to require all of us coming on board. And so that's why I said earlier, it comes down to each of us looking out for those, our neighbors, our friends, those in our social network, those who have not bought in already. It's our job to enter a discussion with them, encourage and motivate them, help them to understand what it is we are fighting against. Because guess what? This virus is invisible. It's not like a hurricane or a flood where you actually feel the winds and see the water rising. It's a virus that's invisible. And let's be real, not everybody understands the fight that we are in. And so we need to be patient and tolerant and explain it to those who have not bought in as yet. And it's not impossible. It's just the manner in which we do so. And before I close, somebody asked about the ferry running between St. Kitts and Nevis and the new emergency powers regulations, section 16, exceptions for day of limited operation, subsection 8, speaks to the provision for the buses and taxis and the ferry to operate on these days. So I just wanted to highlight that. And it's also my understanding that the hardware stores too will be allowed to operate in keeping with the social distancing measures on those days of limited operation. And in terms of my closing remark, it is the task of the Ministry of Health to maintain oversight in terms of the government and the Ministry of Health's response to the outbreak. And we endeavor to continue to suppress the transmission of the virus at a very low level, so that the demands on the health system is not crippling, and in order for us to save lives, and also to a point whereby we can allow some level of economic and social life. And so we are committed at the Ministry of Health in so doing. Thank you.
Mother One, thank you very much, Dr. Laws. Before, of course, the hard work that you're doing and the fact that you're here to talk to us, I know the hours are long, and we want to wish you and your team all the very best from all of us here at Win FM, and of course from our colleagues in the media who are also listening in, who are also part of the program. Final comments now from the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris.
Thanks. Before I get to the comments, allow me quickly to answer the several questions that you allow the callers to put. And I want to thank Gregory, because Gregory is an interesting character. And in every conversation, he invokes the Bible, which is a good thing. I would want to say to him, though, that we would agree that God give us wisdom and would want all of us to exercise wisdom with respect to, and there's nothing that we are requiring of persons to do that would be against the Word of God and in the exercise of their own independent wisdom on these matters. I want to refer to 3 scriptures so that Gregory can research them perhaps for next time. And next time I will perhaps be on Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, Leadership Matters, and so I said, and I gather Win will also be carrying that program. Romans 13, chapter 13 and 1, Gregory says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority," I repeat, "for there is no authority except that which God has established." The authorities that exist have been established by God. The second one, Gregory, is Jeremiah 29 and 7. "Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city, to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." This is an important one because the language here is popular. It is the prosperity for all agenda. And this was a passage dealing with a people who had difficulties in settling and were questioning the authorities then. And here was the advice. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city. In this context, we are saying, let us pursue the health of the country. He says, the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. It may not be your country, but you are living here. And the admonition then, let us all enjoin to fight for the safety and security of the nation of St. Kitts and Nevis. But to go back more directly to the Bible, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. And the last one is 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 17. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God and honor the emperor. We could well replace the emperor by the state in local parlance. So that's it for Gregory until next Tuesday when we will engage again. Bucky made reference to the matter of the social distancing, how that is important. I want to thank Bucky for being a good media personality, and he has done his own policing. And I want to say, beyond the regulation, it is that if each of us would do what Bucky is doing, observe, give a word of encouragement to others, then we will have no need for the emergency powers. If people will do what they will do, we don't have to impose it, and we want it to come instinctively. I think that was the message from the CMO. But Regulation 18 says that there is a COVID-19 task force which may inspect or visit any business or enterprise to ensure compliance with the provision of these regulations. So where there is non-observance, then action can be taken, and there is a penalty clause which says what can happen: a hefty fine, imprisonment, or if you're a business, you can forfeit all that you would have gained as a result of breaking the law. And to be consulted to assist businesses and enterprises to comply with the provision of these regulations. I've spoken to the head of the NEOC, and I've asked him to begin recruitment of persons so that we could give life to this particular provision and ensure the kind of support needed basically is available. Then we had the call about the hardware store. The CMO made reference to that we expect to see hardware stores being open. Indeed, the specific provision which calls for construction to resume in accordance with the regulation, honoring Regulation 7, social distancing, etc. The natural corollary is that it's the hardware stores that will provide the supplies and the support. And where an entity is not specifically mentioned, the reserve power resides with the Commissioner of Police to be able to provide that support. So, Verlin, your question on the hardware store, we have listened to you. We have listened to others, and hardware stores can be open for Monday, but they must ensure that all of their employees are wearing the masks, they observe social distancing, they have markers to indicate to people the distance, how many persons they will allow in their stores. All those things they have to take care of. The matter of the ferry between St. Kitts and Nevis, I had not been able to look at this in a specific way. Suffice it to say that there is a section of the regulation which deals with domestic travel, and that perhaps will most likely be embodied there. Again, where there is a need for any exception to the rules, the Commissioner of Police can provide, has the necessary latitude to make arrangements that are not otherwise incompatible with the spirit of the regulations that are outlined. And again, because on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, we have a relaxation of the restrictions, at least during daytime, a day of limited operations. We would expect that every business, or most of them, including those involved in transportation, would have some flexibility there. Where you are in doubt, you can contact, of course, the Commissioner of Police. The caller who raised the issue of the payment for persons who have contracts with the government, again, we all have to be reasonable, is a good question. But the government itself, by leading by example, was under lockdown, where we had required that the majority of the public servants stay at home unless their work could be executed from home. We have had outstanding response from the Ministry of Sustainable Development. They went out since Good Friday every day to be able to provide the necessary support input to the Treasury in relation to the PAP. And come this Monday, I think it is, over 4,300 beneficiaries of the poverty alleviation support would have benefited from the work. So I thank the Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Elvita Brown, and her staff for their support there. In a similar manner, I could say to the caller that the Treasury Department has begun the processing of payment for contractors who were involved with the roof repair program. Like everything else, the government was in a shutdown mode like most other entities. And those areas that were not critically essential had less staff and less support. As we move into next week, I am advised that this week, a substantial number, almost all that were to be processed have been processed. So you can make the necessary follow-up with Mr. Osbert D'Souza, with Trevlin Stapleton, and of course with the Treasury. But these checks persons went out during the lockdown period to prepare these. So that is the comforting news there with respect to the matter. The shout out to the healthcare workers, we appreciate that. And we want them to know we love and we care for them. We will always owe a debt of gratitude to the Cubans for responding to the provision of specialists. And we thank God that they all came, 34 of them. They were shared between St. Kitts and Nevis, but also they went through the mandatory period of quarantine, and all of them came out of it in flying colors. So we are grateful, and we want to thank Melvina Chapman, calling all the way out of Texas to commend the work of the government and, of course, to show how informed she is at this particular moment. The question of the debt, clearly we want to avoid going back to the IMF again. Clearly we want to avoid having any external body being able to determine the policy priorities of the country and of the government. So at all costs, when we took the decision to pay them off the 117 million that the former government left behind, it was to set ourselves a high example that never again should the country be so bankrupt that we have to go a-begging to the IMF. The experience of Jamaica, of Guyana, and almost every country in the world, that the IMF intervention never cures. Ultimately, the people have to make the necessary adjustment. I want to say thank you to Miss Unity for calling in and for her congratulations to the government for encouraging us to continue to listen. The way we have been able to ease the restriction is a reflection that we have heard, and we have sought to respond to those like Granny who are concerned about the issues to do with public transportation. So Granny, we have heard you. The ongoing discussion with the Ministry of Public Transport, some of it are taking place, I believe, in the week to come, but they already have meeting. So we are listening, and where we hear an idea of merit, believe me, internally behind the scenes, we are working to get those things in operation. I don't know if I missed any other question. Are we looking beyond COVID-19? Yes. Yes, we are. That is why we have set ourselves the aspirational goal that we will be the first country to defeat COVID-19 in our jurisdiction. Of course, it is not left to us alone, because while around us the other countries have it, the problem could be that it could easily reoccur, or you could have a spike. And that is why the closure of our borders will have to be in place for a long time in the future. And I don't hear people saying, well, why close the border anymore? Or how will that impact tourism? Because it is necessary in the same way the Emergency Powers Act. That is a necessary tool. Thanks to the caller from Mount Strat. We are with you. He raised the fundamental question, how are we going to reconcile what is now two competing issues as we see it being played out? The health of the country and the health of the people are money-making activities. Because that is what it boils down to. Some people anxious to make money, and nothing is wrong with that. Money may satisfy all needs. But the health of the people right now is the priority. And we are saying that for the short and medium and long term, there must be no contradiction, because the health of the nation represents the wealth of the nation. If the people of St. Kitts and Nevis take sick by going out to work, there is no business. There is no money to be made. Let us be clear. We therefore have to preserve the health of every worker, beyond every worker, every citizen and resident in the country. By keeping them healthy and well, they can become productive citizens. Only if we have healthy, productive citizens in the land can we preserve the viability and the wealth of the country. So I want to thank the caller from Mount Strat for sharing their experiences there and encourage us to stay on the path that we have had. Overall, it has been a very good day, perhaps long backers, but I think that this program is so informative, and I am happy that I have come. I have come with a star in the personality of our Chief Medical Officer, who really has provided super leadership in the context of the worst pandemic any of us will ever witness again. Certain things in life you only see once. I hope that this will be the first and the last in the lives of many of us, that we will have to go through a pandemic like this that has been so disruptive, so destabilizing to our lives as we know it, to our families, to our communities, and to our country at large. In the end, my job as the Prime Minister is to provide the confidence of leadership, to take sometimes unpopular decisions. It's not easy to say we need a curfew. It is not easy to say don't have a party. But that is part of the burden of leadership. Knowing when to intervene, knowing when to protect people from themselves. Because life has to go on, even when some of us are gambling with it. And so I take the responsibility of guiding the nation through its most tumultuous period of time very seriously. I want to thank all those who have been praying for me and my cabinet colleagues and the Governor General, and for the health practitioners. Yesterday I was at a funeral in my community. I didn't break any regulations. And out of there, I saw a mother cry. Ellen Rollins cried. It was not a COVID-19 case, mark you. But I said, if we were to lose focus, if we were to begin to put other priorities and our personal conveniences above the health of the public at large, we are going to enter a season of wailing and gnashing of teeth. And that is why I was inspired when one of the pastors said to me, Dr. Harris, you're doing a good job, and I want to commend you. I wake up at nights praying for you, because I know you are only human. And you have so many people that you are trying to please, but I want God to guide you. And that was very comforting to me. But even more comforting was when she said, I am remembering Dr. Laws. Oh my, that woman has so much on her hands. And I was indeed thankful because Dr. Laws and her team, it really is a team effort. I see the fulsome support she's getting from Dr. Cameron Wilkinson. And so these are gifted people who have come together, pulling together, giving their very all in a fight that they know we must win at all costs. And all I am asking, let every one of us get involved in this battle to defeat the COVID-19. Set aside the petty politics. It is an all-of-society approach. And everyone, opposition, Christian, Muslim, whatever, your place, position, or attitude, we welcome you to help. Help us build stronger structures. Help us with your constructive advice. The CMO, if you're a health practitioner, she will be able to organize the kind of support you can provide if you are willing. The chairperson of the NEOC, he would be responsible for dealing with all other persons who need, as it were, to play a particular role. We certainly are willing, and we have allowed the professional to lead this particular process so that all the requisite skill can come on board. This situation of COVID-19, it has a lot of unknowns. Neither I know it all, nor does the CMO, nor does Mr. Abdias. Every day, we are upgrading our knowledge and information regarding it. Up to yet, the best scientists in the world have not yet delivered the promised vaccine nor therapy. So we are in a learning moment which can change day by day. It is a moving situation, and my government will adapt. When we say 6 months or less, we really mean it, because it's consistent with our aspirational goal to be the first to have defeated it. And once we would have defeated it, there would be no need, at least if we sustain it, for us to get back to the period of emergency powers. But times are changing, circumstances are, and we cannot take any of the tools off the table. The CMO reminded us very early in her opening remarks that she needs, and the country needs, to have the legislative wherewithal, just as it needs the physical wherewithal and equipment to be able to fight this properly. So the motion extending the state of emergency gives our frontline personnel, our medical experts, our police and defense force, and all the other frontline, the tools they need to fight the virus. I won't let the country give up on the promise that St. Kitts and Nevis will emerge from this stronger, healthier, and safer if we work together in unity to realize that dream. And my call today and every day will be that every household, every member of family, on every street, in every village, must stand in solidarity, united to face this extraordinary challenge. It was the WHO director who first described it as a war against humanity. That is where I got the phraseology of the war. It wasn't a magic and it wasn't a conspiracy theory. Yes, Trump also popularized it, because right now in America, they are having to depend upon Defense Powers Act, a tool of war to help fight this COVID-19. Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. In time to come, we will have to honor you and Win for doing a superb job in helping. One of the 6 elements was getting the country ready, providing the information. That is what we have set up the daily briefing, providing that information. Your radio and all the other radio stations that provide information from the legitimate source. That is what the WHO and PAHO was asking. Let us give people the hard facts that help them to make rational decisions. So thank you very much. Thanks again, one and all, for listening to Win and taking good advice. And thank you, Madam CMO, for partnering at this particular moment in this process of public education. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Of course, we wish you well, sir. And of course, the Chief Medical Officer, of course, I do hope you guys are going to get the time to get some rest as you continue. As you said, the battle is still on, but we wish you well, and thank you very much for being here today. That's our program for today. The Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris, and the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, on today's program of